Welcome to the November 8th special meeting of the Board of Education. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is the election of a President Pro Tem. Can I have a motion?
I'd like to nominate Seema.
And can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Seema?
Okay. Good evening. This is a special meeting to interview candidates for an open seat created by the resignation of Mr. Chris McManus that was effective October 25th, 2017. The board is using a process it has used in the past to fill a vacant seat. The board is interviewing individuals who have expressed an interest in serving a term that will begin on November 14th, 2017 and end on May 15th, 2018. The board will be interviewing candidates this evening. As you can see, there's several board members couldn't make it tonight because of prior obligations. The meeting is being televised, though, live streamed, and a recording will be posted to the district website and rebroadcast on Channel 16 on Thursday and Friday, November 9th and 10th at 7 p.m., and on Saturday and Sunday, November 11th and 12th at 3 p.m. Members of the board who are unable to attend will have the opportunity to watch the interviews prior to the regular board meeting on November 14th. The board will discuss the candidates in executive session prior to the regular meeting on November 14th and plan to appoint the successful candidate at that meeting. Now I'll hand it over to Matthew Creighton, a senior at Guilderland High School, who's our moderator tonight, and Jack Steffens, also a senior at Guilderland High School, who will be our timekeeper.
Thank you, Mrs. Rivera. Tonight we have 6 candidates who have expressed an interest in being appointed to the open seat on the Board of Education. The candidates have been randomly selected to determine the order in which they will answer each of the questions. For example, Mr. Simpson will respond first to the first question. Then Mr. Goes will answer first on the second question, and so on. You will each have 3 minutes to answer the first question. Our timer will hold up the yellow card when you have 30 seconds left, and the red card when you are out of time. Please be sure to wrap up your comments when your time is up. Question number 1, 3 minutes. We will start with Mr. Simpson. Please take a few moments to introduce yourself. As you tell us about yourself, be sure to share information about your background, including your qualifications for and interest in serving on the Guilderland Board of Education. Also, be sure to comment on any ways you have participated in board-sponsored activities, such as community conversations, public meetings on topics such as the budget, priority meetings, etc. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to interview for the open and vacant seat that is being vacated by Chris McManus. My name is Alan Simpson. I'm a former board member. I was on the Board of Education for approximately 7 years, with my term just ending this past May on April 15th. I have a lot of experience. I have 19 years accounting experience in the manufacturing sector up in Watertown, New York, and I have 18 years worth of insurance accounting experience currently working at the New York State Insurance Fund, which gives me approximately 38 years of accounting service. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting, and I have a master's degree in business. As my term on the board, I was vice president for 2 terms, president for 1 term. I was on several committees, which would include the audit committee, the communications committee, the policy committee, and I forget what the 3rd or the 4th committee is at this particular moment. Oh, the business practices committee. I have vast knowledge. I've reviewed the budget in all 7 of the years that while I was on the Board of Education. I have a very comprehensive knowledge of budgeting and accounting. One of the things that I think that I do bring is an accounting background and the ability to ask questions about the business at hand. One of the things that is also important to me is making sure that the institution, the school here, is financially secure so we can provide a good and sound education for our students going forward. As everybody well knows, the students that we educate here in this facility have had a vast successes going in the past, and I would like to see that to continue. I have 2 children that graduated from high school here. My son Tyler, who currently works locally for one of the firms here, and my daughter, who just graduated 2 years ago. Again, I think I'm extremely qualified. I have been on the board. One of the things that the board will not, or the school will not have to do, is they won't have to pay for any of the BOCES classes that are required. So, I mean, again, I look at my record and I stand on the experience that I have. Thank you again for this opportunity to interview for the position.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Mr. Goes, you can start when you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin Goes. I don't have quite as much experience as Mr. Simpson here. I started at Pine Bush Elementary in 2002, kindergarten, and I graduated from Guilderland High School in 2014. So I've very recently been through the entire system that you guys have created and overseen throughout the years, and well done. I went to the University of Albany, where I graduated in 2016 with a Bachelor's of Science in Economics, and I'm currently in my 2nd year of law school. Experience for this job. I started teaching Sunday school at my church when I was 14, and at this point I think I have the 2nd most seniority there. For some reason, parents serve when their kids are in children's ministry, and then they move on when their kids move on, which I respect. I was a teaching assistant at the University of Albany for a little over a year, and during that time I oversaw a tutoring program that served over 600 freshmen. I made a lot of valuable relationships, and I learned a lot from that position. You don't really understand something until you have to get up there and explain it, right? So even though I was teaching micro and I was an advanced senior, it was very beneficial to me. And finally, I've maintained my connections to the district, to the schools, to the students, to teachers that I had. I've always visited the school often to keep my teachers updated on my life and to see what they're going through. And it's been really exciting to see some of the changes that Guilderland has gone through since my graduation. I believe that as a younger person who's recently been through this system and who may be more in touch with the population that we're serving, that I can offer a unique perspective to the board's discussions and provide a different point of view when considering the challenges that we face going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goes. Mrs. Wendling, you may begin when you are ready.
Great, thank you. So from a personal perspective, I have 2 kids that are currently attending schools here in Guilderland. My son is in 2nd grade at GES, and my daughter just started her journey at Farnsworth a couple months ago as a 6th grader. So of course I have a personal, sort of buy-in into what the district is offering its students, similar to Benjamin said. From a professional perspective, what I can offer is simply, the opinions and the viewpoint of a critical friend. So for the past 13 years, after a pretty brief stint as a lawyer, it is as bad as most people tell you it's going to be. I have dedicated myself to strengthening the school system in New York State. So first, my first foray into education was as a classroom teacher in downtown Brooklyn, working with kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade with severe special needs. So it was a sort of a trial by fire, and ever since I have been sort of addicted to working in education. So over the 13 years, I evolved from a classroom teacher in traditional public schools and charter schools, then worked at the administrative level for the State University of New York, opening and strengthening and overseeing its portfolio of charter schools. Then about a year ago, I transitioned to working for a national nonprofit that also supports schools. So every career move that I've made was strategic in giving me a better opportunity to amplify my influence and support of educators. And I think now, I work remotely. I think the stars are sort of aligned to give me an opportunity to amplify the opportunity to do that at home. So for the past 5 or 6 years, I worked full-time in a school oversight role, which very closely approximated the school quality review process for almost 200 schools that collectively educated over 70,000 students. So that is not only very data specific about student performance, about demographics, are all students being represented well, are they all performing as well, then also evaluating organizational feasibility and capacity building, and then also our schools acting in a fiscally responsible and prudent way, because we're all using public funds. So that also, I think just in a lot of ways adds a level of perspective that I could bring to this board. And then lastly, until I switched jobs recently, I had a limited opportunity to really engage with board meetings. I always kept up with minutes after the fact and, reviewed webcasts and such. Again, I think the additional flexibility I have right now with work scheduling makes me, able to attend meetings and such. So I'm excited to, whether or not it's as a board member, to continue the conversation and add whatever value I can.
Thank you, Mrs. Wendling. Mr. Newell, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eli Newell, nicknamed Bud. I go by either. I don't care, really. I'm honored to be with these group of candidates with their background and knowledge. When I graduated from college a long time ago with a political science degree and a minor in business, I worked for the rest of my working career in business. And once I retired about 4 years ago. In my business career, I'd also worked as an entrepreneur and also as an employee. So once I retired, I wanted to get involved in the political science end of it. So I volunteered for different campaigns and the political side of it. But I also started on a quest for lifelong learning, and started at over in Delmar with Bethlehem Central School District. They have what they call HIL, it's called Humanities Institute for Lifelong Learning, and it's 6-week lectures on different aspects, and I found that really interesting. And one of the professors there, and the professors come from all different colleges in the area, and so one of the professors that taught there was, her name was Professor Wittern, and she was a political science or history teacher, and the course was actually the decline of liberalism from Reagan to Roosevelt to Reagan. So I was really, really taken back by it, and all the smart seniors that were there, and being part of that. And then I asked her after about auditing at SUNY, at SUNY Albany. And so she gave me the course, the history of the U.S. Constitution, and I went in there. And it had, when I walked into classes, it's been 50 years since I was in a classroom. So, I really felt intimidated. And but I liked, it's unbelievable to me that I liked being with the students and learning. And lots of times they had no idea of the situation that had gone on in this country that I had lived through. So I found that immensely interesting. And also during my retirement, the past 4 years, I volunteered for being a docent at the Albany History and Art Museum, and also SCORE, which is part of the government SBA program, where you former business people can mentor young people getting into business. And before they can do that, before they get any money, they have to go through us. So that's pretty interesting. So I feel that my background in business and my natural quest for learning would be an asset to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Mrs. McCall, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for it. I'm really honored to participate tonight and start a conversation and start being involved. What you need to know about me to start off is that I come from a family of educators. My mother was a teacher for 40 years, ESL teacher. She finished her career in Bethlehem High School and then moved down to Florida and retired there. My sister is a special ed teacher in Florida. My oldest sister is a EOP coordinator at a community college in Jersey City, and I am the director of college and high school partnerships at SUNY Schenectady County Community College. So really there was no other choice in my family but to become involved in education. And it's been a passion of my family ever since. Really everything that I've done in my life has been towards access for all. And as I got married and have a 3-year-old at home who's going to start her journey into elementary school at Guilderland in about 2 years, I want to be a part of that. You know, being part of what students learn and resources available to them is really, you know, as a parent, you can only, you know, hope for the best for your child. And being part of this process, as I'm serving as a board member, would really afford me the opportunity to see what her journey is going to look like. And that to me, you know, I know what my journey was, and my sister's was very different than mine, and I know that each student's journey is very different. In my work at Schenectady, I do a lot of our early college program, and many of you may have students who do sort of college in the high school or university in the high school programs, but my work goes beyond sort of that dual enrollment program. I work with our we have a grant through New York State where we work with at-risk, underrepresented students at Schenectady High School and get them college credits before they transfer, you know, before they come to the college. So really my whole life has been about what can we do to make education access education for all. In addition, I don't have direct Board of Ed experience, but I do have quite a bit of community experience. I serve on our YMCA Youth Development Board, Black and Latino Scholars. I also started a minority mentoring program at Schenectady County Community College where we serve our minority student population there and help them to, you know, not all about access, but also retention and completion is really a huge thing. Many of you may have read the story in the Gazette about that. You know, what are we doing to improve for our students? And then I also sit on the Capital Region BOCES Citizens Advisory Committee. You know, our commitment to, you know, providing pathways and access to students at all levels is critical, and you know, I look forward to continuing on the conversation. As my journey as a parent is starting, I look forward to, you know, possibly being on the board or continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McCall. Mr. McGuire, the room is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Matthew. I really appreciate you taking the reins here, and thank you to the board, and I appreciate you accommodating me while I'm out of town. And I'll explain as to what keeps me awake tonight, but I'm a resident here of the Capital Region. I've grown up and went to school in Albany, and about 15 years ago, moved to Guilderland after taking a new job. What I do professionally is I'm an economic development and planning professional for a regional planning commission, and we're dedicated to the continued success of the region. I'm also a part-time faculty member at the University at Albany, teaching planning ethics and comprehensive planning. And I'm interested in serving as a member of the school board for a few reasons. First, as an economic development professional, I have a keen understanding of how education and workforce relate to our local economy. In fact, the reason I'm not there today in Guilderland, I'm actually attending an institute with the University of Oklahoma about economic development, and one of the topics that we actually covered today was about workforce and education, so it was pretty timely and relevant. Our local schools really do prepare our children for success later in life, and I think it's important to have the right folks at the table guiding the overall policy of the school board, but allowing the professionals to take control and run things on a day-to-day basis. You know, I want to put my work experience to work to benefit our local community. You know, I value our people the most. We have really top-notch teachers in Guilderland as well as staff. And they're the folks on the front line who are carrying out the vision and expectations for the great education that we have in the community. I talk a little bit about the experience that may not be quite evident from somebody with an economic development and planning background. And that's the experience I had working for the New York State Department of State in their local government efficiency program. And what I did there was worked around the state in 3 different regions, the Mohawk Valley, North Country, and Central New York, working with every level of municipality, from villages to towns to counties, school districts, fire districts, you name it. If somebody had a problem, I was there to help them solve it. And we did that collectively and cooperatively. And so I've had the great opportunity to evaluate a number of school district budgets from around the state, not just locally, but at the same time, like to take some of that experience and knowledge gained through that process and maybe bring it back here with some ideas. I've also was a fire commissioner for the Westmere Fire District here in town for 5 years. During that time, I was involved in the budget development process as well as the internal control process for the fire district. So I've been very much involved throughout the years, both in town and through my professional career. And again, just want to bring that experience to work for you. But at the same time, I've got 2 young children, both in Guilderland Elementary School in 4th grade and kindergarten, and they're my passion. And so I'm just as dedicated to making sure that we have a quality education for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. For each of the next questions, you will have 2.5 minutes. Our timekeeper will hold up the yellow card when you have 30 seconds left and the red card when your time is up. Again, please be sure to wrap up your comments when the time is up. We will start with Mr. Goes on this question number 2. What aspects of the Guilderland Central School District do you value most? What aspects would you like to see improved?
So I think one of the most valuable pieces of Guilderland Schools is the relationships and the caring nature of our staff and the relationships that they form. A lot of the research and writing that I do in the field of education focuses on the need for community and to keep children engaged and motivated. And I really think that our school district exemplifies that with the teachers that we have. As I mentioned earlier, I'm still friends with many of the teachers that I had growing up and recently had an opportunity to work with. So relationships, we should focus on that. Part of that, aspects to work on. Part of that is class size. Is there an opportunity to form those relationships? Access, extracurricular activities, support for more fun rather than more community activities rather than a lecture type setup in the classroom, I think would benefit the kids because we're not really, I don't think that the goal should be just get random knowledge in their heads, but more to teach them how to learn, teach them to love learning. And I think that a relationship with someone who loves learning enough to come to school and help them is what we should be focusing on.
Thank you, Mr. Goes. Mrs. Wendling, the floor is yours.
Sure. So what I think is a primary strength of the Guilderland School District and was one of the deciding factors for my family in choosing to locate here was the diversity. So the ethnic, racial, socioeconomic diversity, that's something that a lot of neighboring districts actually don't have to the degree that Guilderland does. So I think that there's a richness and a depth to that really can't be overvalued. So that is something that I think is great and could be probably leveraged even further than it currently is. In terms of what could be strengthened, I think that while every school or every elementary campus within the district has a unique culture, and that is something that definitely should be valued, I think that there are strengths of program that could be more systemically rolled out to other campuses, and that would give kids across the district a more consistent experience, because there are performance gaps and performance differences between the different elementary schools that continues on into middle school and high school. So I think that those are areas too that are potentially missed opportunities to be rolling out what really works really well at one campus or one elementary school, and making sure that all the other kids in the district are receiving the same opportunity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newell, you can begin when you're ready.
Yes, hi. Thank you. When I first came to Guilderland about 10 years ago, everything that I heard here, since everybody else in the family here that is involved with education, about how good the school system is here. So I feel like my experience in looking at it is I don't have the same depth as the other panelists here, but I think I would want to look at maybe a shared vision for the future of education here, learning about it as much as I can, and then hearing the professional wisdom of other people in it, and try to coordinate that. Maybe set the direction of the district to achieve the highest student performance. Some of the things that you would want to do, create a strategic partnership with the community shareholders, and that's something I feel I would be good at as far as being able to go out and create bonds with the community. With that, that's be about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Mrs. McCall, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. My husband and I bought a home about 18 months ago in Guilderland, but we had lived in Guilderland for 3 years prior to that. And the reason why we wanted to stick in the area and would not see anything else outside of Guilderland was the sense of community we felt here, and really the excellence of the schools. I mean, I brought my daughter to the trick-or-treat street, and every single person that we met some teachers, we met administrators, we met students, we're all smiling, excited. I know it's a huge event, but I mean, that's really what you get everywhere that you go in this district, right? That's where the sense of community, the sense of bonding, that's really what I see. And as my professional work that I do at the college working with the high school, I see that in the instructors that I work with. I see that with the administrators I work with, the way they want to, the new programs they want to bring. I see they're caring for the students to get, to advance, to get more access, to get more programs. One of the things that, though, we struggle with this at a community college level, and we struggle with it, across New York State is, pathway programs. What are we doing at the district level to sort of change in times, bring more innovative programs that meet the workforce and meet the marketplace? That's always changing. You hear things about, manufacturing and nanoscale and all these new programs and the need of the workforce. Are we preparing our students? And this starts early on. I mean, this is not just about high school level or college level. This starts early on, introducing them to just more than the 3 R's and arithmetic and writing and math, and really sort of instilling in our students that these are sort of things that you can do, and these are different paths that each one of you may take. And it's again going back to, what is their journey going to look like, and what are the opportunities that we're affording them at an early stage. And as Ms. Wendley said before, what is it consistent across schools? Are there opportunities at every school for these students to succeed, and the opportunities for them? And that's really sort of that's what I see as a challenge.
Thank you very much. Mr. McGuire, the room is yours.
Well, thank you. I sort of sum it up into 3 main points that I see as the strengths of the school district. One is quality education, 2 is community, echoing the sentiments of another, and as well as diversity. And I'm glad to start to hear the word workforce pop up in there, because a quality education is a foundation to having a solid workforce. In about 20 years, we're going to worry less about attracting companies into our communities, and we're going to worry more about attracting good talent, or having good talent to fill our jobs moving forward. And I think, again, the education that's provided at the Guilderland Central School District is top-notch. I know that because I'm a, indirect consumer. My 2 children are consumers, but I could never imagine how well my children would do in school today, sort of thinking back before they even entered into school. They're well ahead of where certainly I was at that age. We have an excellent community here. I think the community spirit is an important one in Guilderland that we have to, continue to support and nurture. The efforts that the Board of Education has done certainly advances that, and I look forward to continuing that. And the diversity as well. Like I said, I grew up in Albany, and there's a lot of diversity in the city of Albany among the entire population. I think we do have a somewhat diverse student body population, just based on our location to things like the university, and so that does attract some talent from elsewhere. That provides that, but certainly moving forward, we have some challenges of diversity in our staff. That came up during the candidate debates earlier during the election cycle. I'd like to see how we might be able to take a look at that and let our the faces that teach our children reflect that same diversity we see in the community. The other is money. Certainly looking back and some of the hard decisions that the school board has had to make. If you had all the money in the world, we wouldn't have to make these decisions. But I think that this board has weathered quite well through the economic recession and into the recovery stage, and I think that if we can continue to find ways to use those resources efficiently, we'll be great stewards of our money. I'd just like to see us push things a little further. We all see the lists that come out about the top performing schools in the region. I'd like to see Guilderland take a couple steps upward and start to really challenge people for that first place spot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Simpson, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. What do I see as some of the strengths of the school? Well, our mission statement here at the school has provide lifelong learning for all of its learners. I think we do a pretty good job, if not an excellent job, at doing that here at Guilderland. I think that some of the things that we offer have a full breadth for a whole bunch of people. We offer accelerated programs for the very gifted people, and we also have a very good program for the people with special needs. So we definitely take concern and take notice of the diversity in our population, and we do everything we can to do that. I think it's important for us going forward that we have to recognize that we are a member of a community, but we're also a participant in a global economy, and a global economy that's changing ever so much. We are very lucky to be in an area of the world that has some great universities. We've got SUNY Albany, Siena, St. Rose, etc. But we also have a unique situation here in our own school district called Tech Valley. I think that we should be trying to take more advantage of some of the things that they do and partner with some of the things that they offer down there. I think it's very important for us to measure the successes of the students that we have and monitor how well they do when they get out of school. Not every child is going to be able to go on to college and become a doctor or a lawyer. We have a great BOCES program that we participate here in, and both of my children went to BOCES, and they both right now are enjoying the very early parts of having successful careers. I think, again, it's very important for us as a community to understand that we need to be able to cater our needs to the people or our customers, and our customers are our community and our students. And I think up till now we've done an excellent job, and I would like to see us to continue to do an excellent job, even though we've had restricted resources over the past 6 years. But like Mr. McGuire said, we weathered that storm well, and I think we've positioned ourselves in a place where we can do very well going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to question number 3. How does the Board of Education balance the needs of students, staff, and taxpayers? We will begin with Mrs. Welding.
I like that question. So actually what I was thinking about in marinating on some of the other folks' answers were that, without a talented teaching staff, really nothing else matters. So how do we weather budget constraints that could be really accelerated quite a bit in the next several years? We don't know. How do we make this an attractive place for teachers to teach and to stay? So I think, the board needs to take into careful consideration, of course, student achievement should be, in my mind, priority number 1 and behind every decision. But of course, having a healthy staff that enjoys what they do and wants to stay with the school district is very much a part of that. And then, of course, making this a community that is still reasonable and economically feasible for people to remain living in. So that is honestly, in my mind, the most difficult part of being a successful board, and following the decisions and the policies this board has made. I think, I think people have made the right difficult decisions and probably will continue to do that. But I think that the keeping student achievement as priority number 1 makes those difficult calls a little bit easier to make.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newell, you can begin when you're ready.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to call me, so I couldn't pick up on what's been going on here. But anyway, I would say that you'd want to work at maintaining, first of all, strong ethical standards amongst everybody, the teacher, the administration, and like that. I would really much like to be involved in the collective bargaining agreements and see how that goes, and then also have the input that I have in running a business. And then it's a small business, but I have that knowledge. I would want to work on adopting and maintaining current policies. Familiarize myself with that, and then being able to study and figure out the right way to go with that. I would like try to build through the district's progress through continuous improvement. Create strategic partnership with the community stakeholders. support healthy school district cultures for work and learning. And that's about it for me, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. McCall, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. A student, with the budget, it's about student success. Student success inside and outside the classroom. And what are we doing? What are our priorities regarding that? Also, our teachers. Our teachers, are they seeking new and innovative ways? Do they have the facilities? Do they have the equipment? Do they have the resources they need? The educational background as well. The additional professional development to then. And that goes back to the first thing, to make our students successful in and outside the classrooms. And then, infrastructure. I mean, I visit high schools and schools all across this, this capital region, and I see the difference that a clean, a new, a technologically advanced classroom can make in the lives of students. Distance learning, distance education is huge for those smaller districts out there that don't have the opportunities. What are we doing to make sure that our children have those opportunities that will, again, lead back to the first, making them successful in the class and outside the classroom?
Thank you very much. Mr. McGuire, the room is yours.
I think it's balancing the needs of students, staff, and taxpayers. I think comes down to having an open dialogue with the community, and that also includes partnerships. It's difficult to please so many different interests at the same time, but I believe having a very productive dialogue with the teachers and the union, the GTA, having a regular conversation with BOCES and other neighboring school districts for pooling and shared resources is important and critical. I don't have a formula. If I did, I could probably quit my job and make a ton of money by peddling that formula out there on how to balance all that. But again, it's individual to the community. And in order to accomplish that, it's really critical for member and the entire board together to listen to the needs of the community and really chart a path forward, and recognizing that if there is a difficult decision to make, there may be some opportunity to remedy that and resolve that sometime in there. But again, to me, it's about partnerships, it's about dialogue, and it's about achieving consensus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Simpson, you can begin when ready.
Thank you. First of all, that's a really good question. Again, it kind of hits for the heart of what education system is here for. There are in my opinion, three main components of a system, of a good school system, and it's working together with the students, the employees, and the taxpayers. And the starting point for that is to have a good mission statement. And I believe that this school district does have a good mission statement. Like I said in my previous statement, our mission statement here is have lifelong learning for everybody that's here. The students are paramount, but again, we also need to recognize that there are limited resources that we have to work with, and we have to be able to sit down, prioritize, and work with both the district office, the board, and listen to the community to make sure that we come up with the right success formula so that our students can be successful when they leave here. Because again, they are the future of America, and we're being entrusted with them to come up with the best possible plan. So again, it's a good question. It's a tough one to answer, but again, if you keep in mind what our mission is here, which is to be lifelong learning and to provide our students with a success formula when they leave here and to be adaptable to the changing world that's coming ahead, I think that everything will work out for the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goes, you may begin when ready.
So I'd like to start by drawing attention to the fact that the interests of the taxpayers in this town and the interests of the students and the staff are very much aligned. As many of my fellow candidates have said, many of our residents are here for the schools. And if you look at the history of our budgets, they pass almost all the time because we are very proud of our schools here. We do care very deeply about our children. Of course, we can't raise taxes excessively, and to that end, the community, which supports us, can offer other resources that we can draw upon. Time, we have many booster clubs, PTAs. The community is really behind the schools in this town. That being said, as an economist, I have a very deep appreciation for scarcity, and scarcity involves trade-offs, and it involves prioritizing. We have to decide, looking at the budget, looking at what our goals are, what's most important. To me, that's the learning environment that the kids are in, that they're safe, that they're healthy, that they're comfortable and in school, and it's really providing the teachers, the guidance and the leadership that they need to be successful.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to question 4. If you were to be selected as the new board member, what do you think will be the biggest challenges you would face? How will you overcome these challenges? We will start with Mr. Newell.
All right, good. I'm glad to start this off. Well, if I was to be selected, I think the importance of the school board member would be one of the most important citizens' responsibilities that I could take, and something that I would have to really concentrate on, oversee the education of the community's youth. In these challenging times for public education, school boards are seeking men and women who find excitement and satisfaction in confronting tough challenges and working collegially to rise above them and to help students in their communities succeed. That to me would be what I would be striving for. Also, the Board of Education is a uniquely American institution. It oversees and manages the community's public school system. It ensures the public schools are flexible and responsible to the needs of the community. School boards are comprised of volunteers within the community who dedicate their time to better public education. Except for those and other the bigger cities in Yonkers or New York City, board members are elected. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. McCall, the floor is yours.
I think one of the biggest challenges will be, making the tough choices. And because every choice, we all have our biases, we all have our opinions, and we all have our experiences. And when you bring those, we're community members, we live here, we're ingrained in here, we've seen our, children, we've seen our grandchildren, we've seen them all, some of us have come through the system. And, checking that at the door and knowing that the decisions that you're making are not just for you, but for the betterment of your children, the betterment of the community, and making those tough choices that may not be popular, but just being well informed about them and why, and standing by those choices. I think that's probably going to be one of the most challenging opportunities of this board.
Thank you very much. Mr. McGuire, you may begin when ready.
Yeah, I believe one of the biggest challenges that we face, and especially coming off the recession and still trying to right side the ship, is that we don't always have the tools and resources necessary for our teachers to meet the academic and social and emotional needs of our students. I said that during the campaign, and I still stand by that. Our educational system has certainly changed over the years, and it's not just about teaching language or history. Our teachers really help our students develop the necessary skills to be both academically and emotionally successful in life. This is significantly different than years ago. It's not something that really even took stock in as a high school student, but things have certainly changed. And so we can't always go and do the status quo. We have to evaluate what we've done in the past and how we should change it for the future. The cost of education has certainly changed, not only in the increased cost, but where those costs are allocated. Imperative that we be creative to ensure that we meet the needs of our children with the resources that we have. And although it is challenging, I believe that we can do it together collectively as a board and as a community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Simpson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The challenges of the school challenges. Well, I see the challenges as a board member is really we're more in a policy rule-making thing. We don't hire the staff and stuff like that. I think we entrust that in the district office, front office that does that stuff. So what we need to be able to do in terms of a challenge is we have to make sure that we have the checks and balances in, and we're setting the right objectives so that the district office team here can come up with the recipe and the right staff to be able to make sure that the students that we're being entrusted to teach have the resources available to them so that so the job can get done and get done properly. The school district is unlike not many other places. It is a business that is predominantly driven by its teachers and the staff that work here. And that's important. In order for an organization to be successful, like one of the tractor trailers says, our biggest asset sits 90 feet in front of the end of this truck. Well, our biggest asset sits inside, two of our biggest assets sit inside of this building. The staff that teach the students and the students that come to this building on a day-to-day basis. And we can't lose sight of the fact that those are our two biggest assets and are also our two biggest resources going forward. And we need to be able to nourish those two resources, and we need to be able to make sure that they have every possible thing that's available to them that we can afford to give them without going and selling away the whole ship so that they can be successful. Because if they aren't successful, then we as a district will not be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goes, you can begin when ready.
So I think that the biggest challenge of a board member is keeping a view of the long run. The kind of business that we're in, it takes a long time for our end product to mature and our investments to mature. And so it's very important to keep clear in our head that the policies that we adopt, because we're not implementing them, we're not responsible for implementing them. The reason we're in the business of policy is because we're trying to shape what the school district is going to look like in the future. For example, last year there was some controversy over the cobblestone schoolhouse, and yes, in this budget it's a cost, and it's only in looking 5 or 10 years down the road that we get to start seeing the benefits. And trade-offs don't only exist in the present; they exist through time. And I think that the biggest challenge of the school board member is to, the responsibility that we have is to listen to the community and what they think right now, but then also to keep in mind that we're not only serving the current community, we're serving our kids, our future community, and that's a very long process.
Thank you, Mr. Goes. Mrs. Wendling, the floor is yours.
So I think the initial challenge of being a board member or participating in any new venture is getting up to speed as quickly as possible. And that's looking at historical board documents, but also taking the time to get to know and learn from all the other trustees and what they brought to the table, and also just their historical views of what has worked well and what could be improved upon, as any school district can do. I think in as many of the other candidates have also alluded to, I think that the real challenge, the ongoing challenge, is having the right people at the table that are able to take the binoculars to look at, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, how did the decisions we make today impact the students that are going to be the workforce that we don't even really know what that's going to look like yet in 10 or 20 years. And then also the folks that are willing to take out the microscope to look at student data and use that information also to make the more immediate decisions about, to make programmatic changes if necessary, or as I said earlier, to roll out successful things to other campuses. So I think those are the sort of immediate and also long-term and ongoing challenges of being someone that really contributes to the board in a meaningful way.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to question 5. What do you understand to be the primary responsibilities of the Board of Education? What do you understand to be the responsibilities of an individual member of the Board of Education? We will start with Mrs. McCall.
I've been thinking about this a lot. You can look up online, what the responsibilities of a board member are, and you can look at old agendas, and you can look at old, but it really, as all my other colleagues have alluded to, it's really about, setting the tone and setting the course for the future. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We're in the long haul here. My daughter will be in kindergarten in 2 years. 15 years from now, what is that? What is it going to look like? What are we doing? The responsibility of the board really should be to sort of have that ability to do forward thinking, to look at what are current trends, what are things that other school districts, other states. I don't make any decisions with the programs that I run unless I've done my homework. I mean, I call school districts, I call different community colleges, I, video chat with things, I do research, I do, my professional library, my books, and all these things that I have, because it's really important for me that when I make a decision that's going to affect students now and 10, 15 years, 20 years from now, that it be a well-informed decision so that I can look back at it and say, you know what, I did my homework, I understand what it is. Policy making, being fiscally responsible, all these things are, are important, aspects that our board members will go through, but also it's strategic partnerships. I can't tell you, every day we have to be thinking of what kind of partners do we have in the community here and beyond, the radius of Guilderland. How are we extending our hand into, the technology, the STEM, the STEAM? How are we getting our students ready for these careers that are coming down the pipeline that are just a whisper right now, but they're coming down, and we know that that's happening. And we have to be forward thinking about it. And you know what? We have to be able to sort of turn on a dime. Things change daily. Our state ed, when they bring down, I'll talk about the Common Core if we want, but when they bring down things for us to look at and how we're going to implement them in our districts, we have to be ready to be to make those decisions. And so I think being well informed and those type of things is really critical for a board member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McGuire, you may begin when ready.
Yeah, like was just said, that you can easily go online to the New York State School Boards Association to find out what that association says are the responsibilities of a board member and those characteristics. So to be in the position of creating a shared vision for the future of education is one of the bullets there, to adopt and maintain policies. But I think digging behind that and what's not stated in there is that it's the responsibility of a board member and the Board of Education as a whole to know the unique qualities of the community, some of those general responsibilities that are outlined. It's also the responsibility of a board member and the entire board to think about the long game. It was said that it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's right. These aren't one-year decisions that are being made by the school board. These are decisions that for a number of years. And so taking that into consideration and understanding what that means when a decision is made, what that means in 5 years from now. I think that's a critical piece. The responsibilities of an individual member of the school board, is to be a fact finder when an issue is coming forward. It's important for school board members to be well versed and educated on the issues that are at hand. And so that means a commitment to continuing education and seeking out training and resources. But the other responsibility, too, is that once a decision is made, an individual board member needs to stand as part of the team of the entire school board and not be out there and continue to question the decisions of the board that were already made. I've been in that position as a fire commissioner. I wasn't always on board with decisions that were made, but I can tell you that once a decision was made, I stood by and defended the rest of my my board in that regard. So I think that's a critical piece and is not necessarily stated in the information from the School Boards Association. And I also think it's important for a school board member to be an active listener. I talked about effective communicator. Board member, I think it's probably more about listening than it is about talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Simpson, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's kind of a two-part question. Being a board member is a singular thing. But typically, if you're a member of a board, you're really a member of a team. So you need to be able to function as a member of a team. What does that entail? I'm a big sports advocate, so I'm going to use a couple football examples. I look at it a lot like going out on the playing field and the quarterback's calling a play. All 11 players, in this case here, it'd be all 9 players, have to be on the same page to execute that play. And once the play's been called, everybody has to work together in concert to make sure that the decision that was made is supported and the proper resources are attentive to it so that it can be successful. As an individual, again, you have certain responsibilities. I agree with Sean, you're a member of the team. If a decision's made, you need to stand by that decision. The board as a whole, though, its responsibility is to look at the challenges that are there. At times, it's a responsibility to question things that is brought before them by the district office team, and to have a healthy discussion about what the problem or issue is at hand, and to come to a decision that everybody has had a chance to communicate and talk about. I think it's very important that when resolutions are done at the board, there's some discussion around the resolutions. There's some questions asked about those resolutions, and it's not just a motion and a vote. I think it's very important that the community have some knowledge about what's going on with that, because the community's entrusting us as a board to come up with the right decisions and set the direction for the school district. A very critical thing that the board has to do on a periodic basis is to hire a superintendent. The superintendent is a day-to-day officer, like a chief executive officer of a corporation. They're the one that sets the policy and makes sure that the objectives that the board has set out happens. And I think we're very fortunate here today to have a very good superintendent. So again, I think that the board should be applauded for that type of vision, to make sure they put the right people in the right place to make sure the district as a whole is successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goes, you may begin when ready.
Well, as Mr. Simpson said, the community has trusted us to make these very important decisions about the education of our children. And something that I tell my students is that it's very important to have purpose behind every decision that you make. There has to be a reason. So I see the role of the school board in three main functions. First is to ascertain what the goals of the community are. Some of them are very straightforward, educational achievement, welfare of our kids. Others change from time to time based on the issues that we're facing. The second thing is to set policies that will enact those goals. That's the decision-making part. And then the last function is to oversee and make sure that the policies are actually being carried out successfully, and to reevaluate if maybe we need a new strategy. What would the role of an individual school board member be? Well, obviously, we need those decisions to be as informed as possible. So part of that is doing your homework. I know that school board members get hundreds of pages to read before board meetings, and it's important to read them all and to understand them, to ask questions if you don't understand them, so you can make an informed decision. It's also important to get out in the community, and again, we have to ascertain what the goals of the community are before we can act on their behalf. Personally, again, I have a unique perspective in that I've recently been through the system. I maintain close relationships with a lot of kids who are still in the system. I maintain relationships with a lot of teachers who are still working in the system, and I think that they're all have a stake in the decisions that we make, and it's important to find out what their goals are and see how we can best serve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wendling, the floor is yours.
So I agree with everything that's been said, so I'll try not to be redundant, so my response might be a little bit shorter. I think overall the responsibility of a board is to act as an objective body and to work collectively with the combination of skills and expertise and professional experiences and personal perspectives to oversee all the components of the school program and make decisions that will most benefit students. So as an individual board member, I would see my responsibility as someone that's representing the common interest and sort of being a conduit to folks in the community to make sure that their ideas and their goals are represented, and bringing that information back to the board. Doing due diligence, as other people have said, and making sure that I understand the issues from all the angles and the wrinkles that they lend. And then, of course, just supporting the decisions of the board and the objectives of the board to make sure that, to the best of our ability, to make sure that our schools are not only good, but going from good to great, because the kids in Guilderland deserve that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newell, you may begin when ready.
Thank you. Well, I I don't have the same type of educational experience that people have here and on the panel, but I could, through my life experience, both in business and as an employee, I've always tried to work as hard as I can and also give as much as I can to the situation that I'm in. And I could guarantee to people, the community, that I would do that. I have a lot of life experience. Some decisions were good, some were bad, to be honest with you, but I've learned from it all, and I'm sure that I could help the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to question number 6. Explain for the members of the Board of Education and the community why you are interested in serving on the board at this time, and what are your priorities for the district. We will start with Mr. McGuire.
Well, certainly nothing has changed since May. I'm running for a seat on the Board of Education because I love our community and I want to play an active role in ensuring that we continue to provide the best educational life experiences that we can for our children. I have a lot at stake. I've got 2 significant investments in our school district right now. Emily, who's in 4th grade, and Jack, who just started kindergarten this year. I have probably, I think, among everybody at the table, the most at stake today. I believe that parents, like myself, must play an active role in their child's life, and that includes advocating and speaking for them at the Board of Education regarding the direction of their education moving forward. Speaking on behalf of families and bridging any gaps we have. Community service has always been a major part of my life. Those of you that know me or have seen me around know that from my years of being a volunteer firefighter, which were cut short because I've got 2 young children to get to soccer and lacrosse practices, but also to being a member of the county planning board and active in our school's PTA. A real passion for our community, and becoming a member of the school board seems like the perfect fit. Moving forward as a school board member, some of the visions that I have, it includes proactive approaches to foster educational and emotional growth, and that includes small class sizes within the budget limitations that we have, inclusive classrooms where appropriate, and integrated classrooms, so that we're not separating children out by their ability, but trying to keep them together, and developing a curriculum centered around the needs of our students. I wish we had the money to have one-on-one teacher-to-student ratios. That's completely impossible and not feasible. But the extent that we can provide a smaller ratio and more one-on-one time is beneficial. I've seen that just with my daughter, because in kindergarten we had our full-time teacher's aide, and by this point we don't have that, and so the teachers have lost that support in the classroom. And I see some of the challenges that our teachers now face just by the regular conversations we have with them. So I'm a parent, not an educator, but I have a lot of skills that I hope to bring to the table, and I was glad to hear a lot of comments about economic development themes tonight from the other candidates. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, you may begin when ready.
Okay. Why I'm interested in serving, like I said, I was on the board for 7 years prior to this past May, when I left the board. I enjoyed my time when I was on the board. I felt I was a contributing member of the board, and I feel that I have a lot to offer when it comes to contribute to the board over this short period of time that this vacancy is. I have a vast knowledge of accounting and budgeting needs. I have the ability to, I have the experience, I should say, not the ability, the experience of having been already on the board. So I think I bring a lot of things to the table that in the short run is beneficial to the school and to the board as a whole. So that's why I'm interested in being on the board.
Thank you. Mr. Goes?
Education and students have always been a big passion of mine. Going through the school system, I was always a little bit quicker on understanding the material that was presented, and I really enjoyed helping my friends catch up to where I was. I started volunteering at church when I was young. I was a TA at UAlbany, and even today I continue to give feedback to students who ask for it. Recently in Guilderland schools, I've felt that there's been a greater emphasis on student agency, a student role in some of the decisions that the district is making. Last year, we had a real grassroots effort to eliminate class rank from our policy books. Jonah Goldstein, a friend of mine, led that charge, and this year, Guilderland High School is instituting a new, more developed student government initiative organization, and I really want to see the board recognize the efforts of these kids to be heard and to ensure that they can continue to be heard and continue to feel like their concerns are being taken seriously, so that they can continue to be active participants in their own learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wendling, you may begin when ready.
Sure. So over the past 13 years, and even more so over the past sort of 5, I've spent almost all of my waking hours either making school lunches, it seems like, or evaluating school quality according to whatever criteria are sort of the age and that during that day. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I have 2 children that are currently in the schools. I think fortunately, and this is something that we can't ignore, is that some of us, based on circumstance, based on education, based on occupation, have a lot of privileges as that other parents within Guilderland we can't assume that they have. So we want to make sure that our decisions are impacting them equally and ultimately preparing them well for college and career. So what I see as sort of my 3 main priorities, which I think everyone at this table shares, is making sure that we remain competitive with other districts in the capital region. As Sean mentioned before, it would be really great to be at the tippy top of all those rankings. But ways to do that, I think, in a really direct and immediate way are to maintain and also increase the offerings that we have that we're offering students in terms of coursework, in terms of extracurriculars, so everyone can really explore the boundaries of their interests, raise student achievement consistently in year over year. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, just to do all these things to prepare students for success, whether or not that is college, whether or not that's post-college work, whether that's career, making sure that the education students are receiving in Guilderland is preparing them well for life and then the next generation.
Thank you. Mr. Newell, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I've had to think back to when I used to think about the school board when my kids were in school and wanting the best for them. This was in Glens Falls, and that's where I had my business. So I didn't think that I had enough time to be involved in the school board, but I always wanted to be involved in it. So this is probably the best run school or school board that I've encountered, and I thought I'd like to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Mrs. McCall.
Back when I was in college, I was a political science major, similar to Mr. Eli, and I thought that I would become a lawyer and then become an educational lobbyist. And I was going to go to Washington, I would stomp around, and I was going to say, access for all, how are we improving? And I look back now, 20-some years later, and I go, yeah, that's what I do. But I do it on a different level. I actually do it with the students. I do it with the family. I would do it with the community. And I see myself, I think it's my responsibility as a parent, as a community member, to become involved in what my child's educational journey is going to be like. And I live on a little street, and there's 4 middle schoolers, 2 high schoolers, and then my little one. And sometimes it seems like there's 18 middle schoolers, but it's only 4. We've counted. And, I look at what what is their journey? Who are they? What are they doing? And I think of, my priorities. My priorities would be, class size, making sure that there's appropriate staffing, making sure our teachers are, have professional development, have the resources they need. Yesterday I went to an urban school conference in Albany that Schenectady school district put on, and learning about how our world is changing, and being culturally competent, and what are our teachers learning about, different making things relevant culturally for our students, and What is that going to look like when they graduate? I also, another of my responsibilities is, providing programs inside and outside the classroom that are going to create a whole student. And as, we've mentioned, not every student is going to leave here is going to go to a 4-year college or is going to go to a 2-year college or, they're going to go for the workforce, or they're going to take some time off, or they're going to do different things. But have we prepared them to be citizens, and what have we done, on that end? And that's really important. It's that, that outside and the inside the classroom, learning does not stop just when the bell rings. It continues on and on in what they do, in the sports they participate in the clubs and the organizations and the after-school activities and the events, and how are we being able to provide them with more opportunities and new and creative opportunities for them to be involved in. And so, I look forward to, becoming a part of the conversation and possibly being a member of the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes all of our prepared questions. I would like to thank you for your participation in this evening's event. I will now turn the meeting back over to Mrs. Rivera.
Thank you, Matt. I think that ends the prepared questions part of the evening. I didn't know if any other board members have any follow-up questions. I don't. Gloria, go ahead.
I have one. First of all, I'd just like to say I'm very excited that 5 of you are here. 6 of you are here. Sorry. 6 of you are here. I mean, it really gives me energy to know that 6 of you came out here. I think there was a 7th, but because of time constraints, couldn't do it. So thank you all for doing that for us. I was interested because a lot of you mentioned the importance of a board being in tune with the community, knowing the community. So maybe you could take turns and just talk about how the board itself or you individually might get the sense or pulse of the community. What are some of the ideas you have for that?
We will start with Mr. Simpson, recycling through.
Thank you for giving me no time to think about that. Okay, how would I like to involve the community? Well, I think being visible to the community, either be it out in public or on the phone when someone calls you or answering an email, is important. I'm not a big person that would go out and solicit ideas from the community and campaign when I'm at the grocery store or the mall or the movie theater. I think that when people are out, and myself, I don't mind someone coming up and asking me a question when I was on the board and try to do the best I could to answer their question if I could. If I couldn't, I would always tell them that I would have to reach out and get back to them at a later time when I could answer the question. But again, I'm not one that would walk up to a person at the grocery store and ask them a litany of questions of like what they want to do. I would look at being visible within the community, and they feel as though my door was always open, or my visibility was always open, so that they could approach me at any time that they wish to do so.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goes, you may begin when ready.
I've recently given the extreme privilege of being able to visit the high school on occasion and see some of the student work that is being done there, and to offer feedback on that work. So I'm in the high school more often than perhaps many of the other candidates. I talk to the kids, I talk to the teachers, I spend all day talking, and so I feel like I'm very tapped into that community. But I also have this thing of mine where I'm very accessible to everyone I care about, and of course that extends to the community as my responsibilities expand. When most people go to bed at night, they turn their ringer off, right, so that they're not disturbed. I turn mine all the way up, because if someone feels that they need to call me in the middle of the night, I want to make sure that I can answer that phone and see what they need. Thankfully, no telemarketers have called me at night so far. But I also have a policy of answering every email within 24 hours, even if it's just to say, I've seen this and I'm going to get a more substantive answer back to you. The students that I talk to that appreciate my feedback and want more of it, I give them my cell phone number. I say, I try to be very, very accessible because they deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Wendling, you may begin when ready.
So every evening, I feel like I'm connected with dozens of parents at various sports practices across Guilderland. And from what I know from parents, everyone cares deeply about their child's school experience. Unfortunately, I think life now is so busy, even for non-parents. I think that some of that direct participation falls by the wayside. And also what I've seen, and I'm also a victim of this too, is that what people don't ignore these days is social media. So I think that's an avenue definitely that could be explored more deeply to, both solicit opinions and, get more information out there for folks to think about and transmit their opinions back through board members. But also as an extreme extrovert that works from home, I cannot connect with enough people. Like that's pretty core to who I am. So part of the, being a conduit to the community to make sure that people are understanding what the board is grappling with and get their opinions and report back on that is probably part of the challenge that I would be most up for.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newell, you may begin.
Unlike Benjamin, even if I had my phone turned up, I wouldn't hear it. So I'd have to come up with another way if somebody had to really get a hold of me. But well, a position sometimes I think is hard to take, hard to stand with. If I go through this at the local Y here, where sometimes I feel like even though it's controversial, if I can walk by it enough times, and if finally I can't take it anymore, and I have to respond to it. So with the school board situation, then especially with the elders, you hear how much it costs, how much the school costs, and if I was on the inside and I knew what was going on, I don't mind standing up, even though it's controversial, and a lot of so that if I knew what was going on, I mean I'm okay with taking that stand and then helping the school out that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. McCall, the room is yours.
Thank you. You have to go where the people are, attending events, going to the schools. Part of my responsibilities in my, day job are I travel to 24 area high schools. And I do that constantly. So I'm, putting miles on my car, but I'm also sort of, when I get to the high school, I just love to talk to the administrators. I love to talk to the students. I love to talk to the teachers because their passion for what they're doing is just evident. And that's really, when we talk about a school board, that's really what it is. It's everybody has a passion for what they're doing. It doesn't matter what school district you are. And it's, as part of a board member, it's really listening to, what their passions are, what they would like to do, what what ideas they have, and then going to those events. My husband and I were able to go to a football game for the first time a couple weeks ago, and it was Friday Night Lights. It was great. It was everything that I had hoped it to be and more. And really just, but we were able to talk to some community members there and sort of find out more information, being relatively new to the area, only 4 years. So, you really have to go where they're at. Nobody's going to, with how everything's are busy and how everything that you do, people aren't going to come out just for an event that you're fact-finding or seeking more information. But if you go to where they're at and you go where their children are at and what they do, they will talk to you there. And I've found that to be, people are very willing to tell you what they feel and what they think about education. So that would be, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGuire, you may proceed when ready.
I think it's important, everybody said it, you've got to go where the people are. As a fire commissioner, my wife and I used to joke that a run to the market to get, a half gallon of milk was about an hour and a half process, because I seem to run into everybody and talk to everybody there, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely thrive on that. Same thing happens at church on Sundays. You walk in, and I'm thankful they have coffee and donuts afterwards, because I end up sticking around and talking to people. So at least I'm well fed. It's also it's sort of a different way of engaging people these days, and I'm not afraid of it. And I do make good use of social media to let people know what's happening in the community that they may not be, fully aware of. I do share a lot of things that are going on in the school district. Things like Trick or Treat Street recently, made sure that we got word out about that around the community, and some other events. So I think it's important to not only be physically present in the community and be open to those impromptu conversations and questions that come up, but I think being actively engaged in the community through tools like social media that we didn't have, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, the whole landscape has changed. And again, you have to work with how people communicate, and I think that's a really effective way to hear what people have to say, but also having the wherewithal to know that you have to sometimes understand where that's coming from, and the outspoken few may not represent the needs of an entire community, and so that's why it's important for a member of the board to be integrated into the educational community as well. And, just having those casual conversations are a key part of it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any more questions? Barb?
Yeah, this is sort of a follow-up to Gloria's question. Over the years as a board, we've tried various methods of reaching out to the community, and going way back to the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee, and then we have different task forces, and each year we ask for input as individuals or as part of a PTA or whatever. Have any of you taken advantage of any of these opportunities? And if you have, were they helpful, not so helpful? Again, we're looking for feedback from you 6 members of the community as to how effective that kind of outreach is.
Ben, you will start.
So personally, I've been an adult member of the community for a relatively short amount of time. But I see, to be perfectly honest, as a student, I wasn't aware of the importance of the role of the board. You guys are kind of the silent partner in our education. We know Dr. Wiles. We don't always see you lovely ladies. So the kids today, though, are amazing, and they are cognizant of the role you play. I mentioned Jonah Goldstein earlier. I know that other members of Guilderland High School often make appearances before the board to speak to them at the regular meetings. But again, I don't go to too many PTA functions, as I'm neither parent or teacher.
So until I switched jobs about a year ago, when I left working for SUNY, I was one of those parents that probably was very interested in participating, but was a little afraid of what the time commitment might be. So I think part of the messaging around getting, building up community participation is how little or how much time really does it require. And then also I think a lot of parents don't necessarily think that their views or their backgrounds or their professional skill sets are really relevant. So I think part of it too is that making it very clear that everyone's opinion is valued, and also maybe just explaining it with a little more detail about what people can offer and how, and piggybacking a little bit on the use of social media, is there sort of virtual feedback that people can give you, or can they participate in other ways other than maybe showing up?
Thank you very much. Mr. Newell, you may proceed.
To be honest with you, I haven't heard of anything at this point as far as the PTA, you said, PTA involvement?
We've had a number of committees, task forces, where we've tried to involve the community, be it on building projects or developing our budget. Right now, we're sort of educating the public in a sense under a potential later school start time for teens. And we always reach out to the community and at least ask for some community members to be on these task forces, and which I personally find, very, very helpful. And as I said, but maybe parents don't feel that it's helpful. That's why I'm sort of reaching out to you folks to see if that's the direction we should continue going.
No, all those things that you said, I'd be interested in it. So it would just be a matter of finding it out. So I wasn't aware of it at all.
Thank you very much. Mrs. McCall?
I find all my information on the web. I'll be honest. I go through a website and I will eat up the website and I will try to find everything. And when my husband was the one that said, Guilderland is looking for has a vacancy on the board. Why don't you look at this? So I went to the website. And I found, that's how I get most of my information. And I found that, most people, they really, if they want to know something or if they're interested in something, that'll be their first stop. And I found it very difficult to navigate. And I found that I pressed things and things would pop up that it wasn't there, or and I mean, it's the 2-click thing. If I can get to it in 2 clicks, I'm done. And I think that that's our age, is that we're trying. If I'm on my phone, I'm done. You've lost me at that point. So really, sort of, how are we reaching out, electronically, digitally to people? At the college we teach a class called digital culture, and I mean, it really is, and it's not just the young, it's not just the youth, the students, it's the parents, they're at a game and they want to do something quickly, want to find out information. If there was something on the website or, mentioning, on social media that we can quickly do a little survey or something, I mean, that would be, I could do that in a couple minutes and it would be more user-friendly. But I think to me, that's how I find out my information. That's how I want to sort of quick, simple synopsis of what's available, what I can do.
Thank you very much. Mr. McGuire, you may proceed.
Yeah, I really appreciated a lot of the outreach that the school board has done. Sorry, I got a little echo there from you. I was part of the building reuse committee and really had really enjoyed that process, and hopefully the information that we came up with was helpful to you, and I believe it was, because you did take one of those recommendations and move forward with it. I do get my information through the PTA. Because I tend to be involved. I may be in the minority on that sometimes. I sort of use my parents as my litmus test of whether or not information has gotten into the community far enough down. Because if they know about it, I think that we did a good job getting the message out. I do like some of the engagement strategies that others in town use. One in particular, I really appreciate the library board does, making use of Facebook Live to broadcast its meetings. It makes the meetings just amazingly accessible. I can pop in, I can pop out. There's quite a few times I've watched snippets of the library board meeting just because it popped up into my Facebook Live, popped up into my feed as Facebook Live. So I think it's constantly about thinking about the different ways that people are communicating. The other strength there is just the diversity of the board and where we all come from, because we're all talking with different groups around town, and that's important. I think again, back to the responsibilities of a board member are to ask questions within your networks about the things that you're looking at and considering, and try to gather some information that way. Is it entirely scientific? No, it's not, and I don't think that we probably, without spending some money, would get really scientific results to a poll. But I think we have a real opportunity to get the pulse of the community through those networks, and again, embracing other different resources and learning from the best practices of others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Mr. Simpson.
Barbara, I've had the experience, I think the only one sitting here other than people at the board, being a member of the CBAC committee. That really brought out a lot of people that was here. That particular process of communication during the budget process, I thought it was lengthy and at times it was somewhat boring, but it did get a lot of people at one time to show up and provide some level of interest in what was going on at the school. With the budget process, we've tried a number of different things. We've had the board has had varied successes around different community conversations. I've been to certain community conversations where you couldn't get in the room the first couple times that we did it, and then towards the end of that process, you could hear a pin drop in the room because the turnout wasn't so well. I think in today's society, there really isn't any one unique way to communicate with people. I think you have to have a variety of different ways. The web is very active. Social media is very active. As a board member, I went to PTA. The high school virtually has 1 or 2 people that show up PTA. The same thing with the middle school when I was there. The elementary schools do have a very active PTA. At least the ones that I went to were a fair number of people did show up, and they were very, very active in the PTA. So I think that's one place where we can take and expand some of our communications with our local community. I served on two things that came to mind when we had the capital projects, and we solicited people, and I think Judy was on the same committee that I was. I think we had somewhere close to 25 or 30 people from all different areas. That was a very good committee, and I felt that the recommendations in the report that committee generated was really good. And the last one that I can remember was when we went down to Tech Valley and we had the controversy around how we were going to handle I forget what the report was, but it had to do with repurposing schools. And again, I think the outcome of that drew a lot of support from the community and was very successful. So I don't think there's one way to do it. I think we have to try different ways and multiple ways.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, well, thank you all very much. Took a ton of notes. There's lots to think about. I think I need to make a motion, or does someone need to make a motion to end the meeting? Yeah, are we just done? Okay, Gloria and Judy? Okay, thank you.
Oh, you guys did pretty.